Thank you so much, Jules. And my name is Alex S. I'm a compulsive overeater. I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I'm extremely grateful to be here. Very grateful to Amanda for asking me to share, and very grateful to those who give service here, which is such an important tool of this program. Uh, as I mentioned, I'm a compulsive overeater. I found this program 2 years ago. Um, and prior to that, I experienced the full spectrum of what it was like to live, in a 400-pound body, um, and and throughout my life, really, the disease took hold, and took hold in a way that, towards the end, um, really took me to a depth, um, to a bottom that I didn't know existed. And almost 3 years ago to the day, I had a spiritual experience while I was deep in the disease. And as profound as that experience was, after about a month or so, the disease took hold again, and it got worse and worse. And it was about 10 months later, May, just before my birthday, and this is 2 years ago, that I decided to take my life. And I went through the process of thinking and planning how that was all going to take place, and the firearm I was going to use and where it was going to take place. Um, and I went through it methodically. And it's one of the most painful moments in my life, because I'd become sick and tired of just being sick and tired. I had a way of having a shower. And when I got out of the shower, I was able to look at myself in the mirror, but without looking at my body, because I didn't want to see the monster in my mind that I'd become. And so I had a way of just looking at myself and only being able to see my eyes, not being able to see the rest of my body. And something happened in that moment. And I don't know if it had to do with the mindfulness from the awakening that I experienced 10 months later. But suddenly something happened. And I thought about mindfully what the repercussions of my actions would be. I thought about how devastated my wife and my children would be, how my neighbors and extended family and my colleagues from work. And I even thought about how horrible it would be for the ambulance attendants, the paramedics, to have to take my body, my diseased body, down the stairs. And I realized that I needed help at that moment. And I talked to some family members, and hearing all your beautiful accents kind of brings back some memories, because 2 years ago, I started attending meetings all over the world, finding meetings that had English speakers. So I attended them in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. Anywhere I could find an English-speaking meeting, I attended. And then I found one where someone just resonated with me. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just their aura. But this fellow um, said that he was a sponsor. And so, being in the US, I texted him, and I thought there was no way that he would text me back. Um, and he did. And I asked him to be my sponsor, and my my life has changed in ways that don't quite make sense to me. Because the person I am today is a completely different person than I was a few years ago. I was a miserable person. I was a nasty person. I lied, I cheated, I did some really shady things. And, he took me through the steps. We worked on a food plan, and I practiced something called sober eating with this group of men. And, it's people look at you and they see the changes physically. And those changes are remarkable. But it's the changes on the inside that are far more remarkable. And I look at this meeting and there's 147 people. The reason I remind you of that is because I have to keep reminding myself that I didn't do this on my own. There's 147 souls on here, and that's a testament to the fact that we can't do this alone. And as I worked through the steps, step 4 and 5 and 6, they were tough, but holy shit, when I got to step 11 or step 8, I should say, I'm 56. I had to go back, close to 30 years to make amends with people that I'd wronged. And that is so tough. The steps are so simple and yet so hard. And yet, with my higher power, I somehow managed to weather this storm. And, I used to be such a judgmental person. We have an area here in Vancouver where it's filled with, drug abuse, and I used to be very judgmental. And I realized there's nothing, there's no difference between them and me. You know, I have this, I have this peacefulness now, this serenity, this neutrality around food that I didn't have before. And the more I practice meditation, and then the more I pray, the more I can feel those disturbances arise, from day to day. When I say the changes have been remarkable, they have, but life, the universe still throws its share of curveballs in my direction, a lot of them, and things that in the past would have compelled me to eat. And I can feel those triggers now. And, so, what do I do? I use the tools of the program. I use the tools of the program every day. I get up at usually but sometime before 5 o'clock in the morning, and I pray and I meditate for at least half an hour. Today I meditated for an hour, uh, which is a miracle in itself. I was not a meditator. I pray. I call. I have a great fellowship that I call, and they're all over the U.S. and Canada, and some of them are in Europe. But I use all the tools of the program, and it's I can't really put into words how grateful I am for this program. And I think that for anyone who's just recently started, the rubber hits the road when you start. When you start caring more about other people, you care about yourself. I used to think that I didn't have faith. I came into this an atheist. And the reality is, I had a shit ton of faith. I had a lot of faith, but that faith was in me. I thought I was God. I thought I could do anything and work my way out of any problem. And it's not until I looked in the mirror well into program that I realized that the greatest adversary that I've ever faced was that staring back at me in the mirror. You know, I was uh, I was not a humble person. Before I used to think I was all that in a bag of chips, and now I realize how little I know and how I have, how I virtually have no control over anything. This program has been about, for me, stripping away my ego and just letting go. And it manifests itself in all sorts of ways every day. I sometimes drive and I can feel this urge to want to not let the person beside me pass me in the car, or, say something derogatory towards someone when they're talking. And this program is, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly stripped away at that ego. But I've gotten to the point now where I'm far more mindful than I was before. Um, I see I only have a couple of minutes left here, but OA is OA has saved my life. It's I told my wife, and I've told this to her a few times, had I been you, I would have left me a long time ago. That's really hard to admit. But she said, through the program, I don't think she said through the program, but it's been since I've been through the program, she said, I always saw something in you. I always saw the person you were meant to be. And so for me, recovery has been about discovering who I am. Um, Not perfect, not perfect at all, but I'm not turning to food or other compulsive behaviors when something arises in me, a disturbance. I have the tools of the program. I have sponsees. I have a sponsor. I have a food plan. I call people several times a day, and they call me back. And I'll put my number up there after this, and welcome to call me anytime. And it's not about offering my advice to you. It's about listening. It's another thing program has done, is just made me a far better listener, because I used to think I knew everything, and I know nothing. So thank you very much to everyone.